should just remove all the tables and have a circle in the middle and just have like a sharing session.
So good morning, lovely ladies. And this is so wonderful to see the early risers. The handful, but yes, you are the one, and that makes the difference. So I have a request, before we have two speakers here. So I have Roxana along with me, and my name is Harsha. So I request, can we just come together a little closer? It will just make it more good session. Maybe the center table, it's like rather than big spreader, the center one, and that even in the front. So that will be
Yeah. What do you want?
The center table, yeah.
The chairs?
We can take the chairs over here.
Just put the
so nobody can do the G.
6 or 7, yeah, that's beautiful. And even that madam from Nepal, I also request if you could just come in the front. It was wonderful hearing you during the plenary session the other day, and it was so inspiring. So,
to be very honest, I'd like to be in this seat because I have a special, my daughter is going to have a baby. She's in labor pain room now.
oh my God.
So
No worries, you can be there in the
time. It might
Even
disturb
if she
you.
calls and you jump
Yes,
up,
so
then we would like to be
I'm
part
so
of that.
sorry.
We'll just take a picture. Please come to
Yeah,
finalists.
stop in front.
Take a picture of the audience.
On this side, maybe.
Today
Yeah.
my mind is not here.
That's okay, it's alright.
You can come.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Take a picture so that audience
Hello?
can see.
Yes. So you can join in this
Just
chair.
one moment. Just one minute.
You can join that chair, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that is
So
wonderful.
we can show like this some audience.
This is beautiful. So, namaste.
Namaste.
So, namaste. I begins with namaste. I respect the divine in me and I respect the divine in you. And that's how namaste is. I see all of us are here from outside India, is it? Except my supporters and moderators. So, can we just have, which country you are from?
Slovenia.
Wow.
Kenya, USA.
Wow.
Denmark, Russia.
Canada.
Oh.
Israel.
Beautiful. So, it's global. So, welcome to Delhi, India. I am from Delhi. I'm from this space. And so, today we have this topic of success, failures, and the drive to keep creating. In this short time which we have, I will be sharing my life and how I went through this journey of success, failures, and what kept me keep creating. So, good morning, my friends, and I'm thankful to all WEF for giving me this opportunity to share about my life experiences on success and failures and the drive to keep creating. So, think of it like this. For most of our life, we live out our existence here in the middle of the chain of human experience where everything is normal and reassuring and regular. But failure catapults abruptly. It catapults us abruptly way out over here into the binding darkness of disappointment. It could be the other way around too, where there is a sudden success and you get lost in the world or in the cloud of success, so much so that you hit the bottom again. So if any of you have experienced that, that roller coaster, just show up your hand. That roller coaster of success. So I mean, there cannot be anyone who hasn't gone through either of the two,
It always has to be.
right? So thank you for acknowledging that. And success and failure are two different spectrums, and both blind us in its own ways. Do you agree?
Yes.
Touch your heart. It does blind us. Be it either way. Okay. So let me share my story now. As a child, I always scored very well during my academics. Very well. My parents were very proud of that. So was I, because there was no one else in my siblings or cousins or brothers and sisters getting that. So I was like, wow, I have some super support of God, and I'm so great, like that kind of a feeling. So it kind of became a habit for me. And then after my post-graduation, or like master's degree, right? In 2005, I was appearing for a professional course in the domain of finance. I come from a finance background, so I have a professional post-graduation master's in finance from different universities in Delhi. And then time in 2005 when I was appearing for a professional course in finance called as a Certified Financial Planning, if you guys know of. So there, it has certain levels to appear. You know, it's like you clear one, then you go to the next one, then the next one, and as you keep going up, it becomes harder and harder and harder. So there were 5 levels. So I was to appear now for the 5th level. I had already done before. Now the 5th one. And that 5th level was a subjective kind of examination where you have to sit down and pen down all the subjective answers at 6 hours at a stretch without any break. That's like a pretty demanding examination. Yeah. What happened? I couldn't clear it. And then I said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this course. I don't want to do this professional degree. I quit. It was like subconsciously a failure for me in my record of academic excellence till date. As previously, I topped in universities and I was a gold medalist, and then not clearing that particular exam in my very first attempt, I couldn't take it. On face, I didn't show it like as if, I said, I don't want to do this, but subconsciously it was a failure. Time moved on. I was doing research job in the investment banking industry with all investment bankers across the world. Then after a point, I wasn't getting promotions in my job. In the initial phase, I kept on getting promoted every 6 months. My salary would increase, my designation would increase, I would enjoy all of that. But then when the promotion stopped, I said, I don't want to continue this job. I quit again. Then I thought of starting my own business. What do? I mean, if I'm not doing job and not studying, let me better go and start my business. Things didn't work out well even there with other partners in the business. The business was into a new industry, not my domain. First time getting into business, don't know how things work, right? It didn't work out. And I said, I quit again. Saying, I don't want to do this business. So what is that I want to do? That was a big question for me. I was failing and quitting. Yes, very disappointed, confused, worried, stressed, doubtful. I started doubting myself in this journey. I realized, what is going on, Harsha? I realized my own fear of failure, my fear of dying, my fear of my ego getting crashed, that you are good, you are number one, you do good, all that was getting crashed somewhere. And you know, when I was preparing for this session today, to really reflect back, it wasn't easy. To really see all my failures and share out here in public, it wasn't easy. We always love to paint a rosy picture. You know, it's like, I'm so good, that kind of a thing. But I want to really see the reality. What happened after that? Well, the truth is, till the time I became comfortable in failing and getting up again and again and again without worrying about getting failed is what makes me stand here today. Here's the truth. way more entrepreneurial ventures fail than succeed. We all know that. Yes?
Yes.
Raise your hand. You agree with me. That is a hard truth to stomach. But that's the truth. But the potential of the entrepreneurial journey makes this effort worthwhile. Yes? Entrepreneurship has always been and still is the greatest way to acquire wealth. Whilst entrepreneurship and wealth are therefore interrelated, I do not believe that's the primary driver for most entrepreneurs. Although there's nothing wrong with wanting to generate wealth. We all want that. But failure is part of it. Are we comfortable? Are we accepting it? Are we fine to share and talk about it? Or do we just, go into a, cocoon or a den or lock ourselves somewhere? So how did I do this? Where did I get the courage to get up again? My name is Harsha Garg. I am a life wealth coach based out of Delhi and an author of upcoming book, 3 Aspects of Life Wealth. I work with my clients today closely to build truly social, people, materialistic, and spiritual wealth. This is what I experienced in my journey. It cannot be only one. It has to be a holistic perspective towards life. Even in my journey to work as a professional coach, it's not free of failures. It's not. We all go through that phase of stabilizing, connecting, establishing, and getting repeat clients. But every time it happened, I told myself, Harsha, go back home, get coached, and go coach. That is it. Every time there is a failure, that means there was some success. Success and failure follows each other. They go hand in hand. There is no meaning of one without the other. When I said I failed in the 5th level of Certified Financial Planning examination, that means prior to that there were 4 other levels where I succeeded. Yes or yes?
Yes.
I did. Success has its own challenges. We all face the same kind of challenges. After success, what is the challenge? Anyone? The need to do better becomes a challenge. That is the challenge with success. And what is the challenge with failure? Anyone? Not to give up, to stand up again. That's a big challenge. To face it. To say, yes, I did, I failed. It's okay. That's a challenge. So my dear friends, this is possible only and only when you love. When you love your craft more than you love your ego. Or you love yourself. Love your craft more than you love your ego or yourself. If the love is there for that, failure doesn't mean anything in that. The only way to move forward is to embrace failure and create for the love of your craft. Only when we are free from the burden of our success can we continue to forward to build even greater creations. Right? So you get that there is a burden in success. Yes or yes? There is a burden in success. Can we free ourselves up from that burden? Yeah? Because many of us do not get up and do because we know there is a burden in success. And if that happens, how would I take it? So we won't even achieve that. But we've got to free ourselves from that so that we can actually create greater creations, successes. To keep the drive to create alive, it is critical to come back home. When I say home, go back to your craft, where you rightfully live, irrespective of success and failures, and keep creating. Work for the cause that matters most to you, more than you, yourself, and your ego. Don't worry about judgments and criticisms. Always remember, rejection does not matter. This issue affects all of us. We all feel like giving up as failure hits us, but it is important to understand that failure is only a bump in the road ahead to your destination. You can connect with me on my email ID, which is wealthgym1@gmail.com. You can take it from me even later on, and I would be happy to connect with each one of you personally and see what I can contribute. Thank you so much. So I call on my Thank you so much. So I call on Roxana to take this conversation from here.
Thank you, Hasha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So happy to see that we have more people in the room than what we started with. Hasha, thank you for sharing your story, and I think actually I was reflecting very similarly to you, and I think we're going to touch upon similar points, because I think all of the women that are here today, and also all of the women I've met, this is my first time here, and it's been really an honor, and I've been very grateful to hear the stories that I've heard, and to connect, because I think the topic of success, failure, and how you keep on going is a topic that most likely actually all of us have gone through, because all of us are here, and it means you're women that are having an attitude, and men, of course, and that have gone through life. So when I thought about this topic, I thought that the easiest way to share my perspective on this would just simply be to share my story, and I'm sure that hopefully it will resonate with some of you, and maybe you can reflect within and understand why I view the things that I view. To do that, I'll start with a map, and now I'm used to Max, so clearly I'm not good at this one. I don't know if you can see, this is the map of the world. And my journey starts on an island called Sakhalin. I question in the crowd, does anyone know where Sakhalin is? I like to refer to it as the end of the world and beyond. So, it's this island, okay? So this is a Russian-Japanese island, and this is where I was born. When I was, actually even Russians needed visa back then, so it was a pretty close space. And as a little kick of information, we didn't have the Lada cars, we had the Toyota, so we had a different reality back then in Russia. In the 90s, my mother decided to move. She was quite a young woman, and she decided to move because, as you know, with the fall there was a lot of instability in the country. So she moved to Denmark. Does anyone know Denmark? Yes. And it's right here. And Denmark, actually, when I meet, still today, when I share today, so I'm like, well, I'm originally from this island. They're like, oh, you're from an island. This island is 5 times the size of Denmark, just to put that into perspective. So we moved with my mother to from Sakhalin to Denmark. I wish that I could share a story of successful immigration and great integration process. However, unfortunately, we faced a very tough journey, because when we arrived to Denmark, my mother, she married, and the person we married was a very violent man, so we went through domestic abuse for quite a while. And even all our identity papers were destroyed, so we became lawless due to this man who harassed us. At the same time, I quickly learned that if I wanted to succeed within the Danish society and have a voice, I needed to excel in my studies, because else simply I would be judged upon. As I came from Russia, which was the wrong place to come from, because Denmark supports US a lot, and I was more seen as either a spy or a gold digger or something like that. So there was a lot of challenges that we faced with that. As another part of the story, I can share that I actually returned back to my island when I was in my early 20s, and I met my father there for the first time. And to give you a good impression of my father, the first thing he said after not having seen me for, I think, 20 years, he said, look as pretty as your mom, let's hope the brain is not the same. That was the first comment. And with him, when I was there in my beginning of my early 20s, he asked me, well, Alexandra, what do you want to do in life? You know, what possibly can someone like you do? And I said, well, I've heard about this double degree program, and I really liked economics, and I liked business, and I said, I would really like to get this double degree. And he said, okay, yeah, try your best. And also to say he had a son that was, I think, 2 years old at that stage, and he already put money aside so he could study at Stanford, so that was kind of a set route. And then he asked me, and what do you want to do after your studies? And I said, well, I thought about, I would really like to work at the United Nations. And he said, now, United Nations in Russian is OON, so OON. And so he said, oh, you want to work at the OON? Sure, my friend, you just call me when you get there. And then afterwards I said, well, maybe one day I would like to have my own company, just like you. And he laughed and he said, Laksana, in order to have a company, you need to have a great network and you need to be a great businessman. So this is not for women like you. And as I've learned in this conference, you should never say no to a woman because that will inspire her to go forward. And I can share with you today that actually I do have a double degree. So I have a degree from National University of Singapore and Copenhagen in economics and in business administration and management. And I hold 2 specializations actually from MIT, one within artificial intelligence and business and one within cybersecurity. Wow. So just, that was the first point. Second point that I learned and I quickly realized was that I really wanted to travel and see the world because I knew that there was much more than just Denmark in this great planet. And I studied Chinese for a year, so I went to China. I worked with children and worked with intercultural experiences and learning and understanding. I traveled all around in different places, and I had the experience of working with international organizations in Benin and Ghana, as I shared here before. And I also worked with small-scale gold miners in Central Asia, working on what could be the different benefits and challenges within this area. And I just went from place to place, and I jumped a lot around. And at some point, I actually ended up here in India. And I was just traveling, a little bit of a backpacking experience. And I really wanted to see Taj Mahal at sunrise. Now, I never reached Taj Mahal at sunrise. Unfortunately, we were driving on the road, and this happened, I think, 6 years ago. And there was a young gentleman, an individual who went on the highway, and in our speed we wanted to avoid the crash with this person, so we turned left, or the driver turned left, and with full speed we crashed into a big concrete high flyover. You can imagine those concrete walls you have. So I actually woke up outside the car with a man shouting and asking me, Miss, are you alive? And I first thought that was a nightmare because I was not sure whether I was alive and if that was hell, because the last thing I saw was actually just the wall, and I thought, okay, this is the end. I ended up at a local hospital. I went through a very interesting experience there, and actually I was there with I like to view life with a twist of irony. I was lying with another young man who was from America next to me, and he was really panicking, and he's like, doctor, am I going to die? Because he was covered in blood. And the doctor said, and I told him, John, it's going to be okay. And the doctor said, Miss, this is not this man's blood, this is your blood. And actually, I was the one who was the worst off. So I had an open break several places, and I had a dislocated spine, I had a big hole in my head, and my face was blue, and I arrived back to Denmark in a wheelchair. Just to share, I have actually feared coming back to India So it took me a lot of courage to come here and stand in front of you. So I'm just very happy and honored to be here. And I realized when I was kind of there and I had to go through this recreational process, I was like, okay, so what? I really need to do something that matters because life is so short and it can disappear. So my United Nations came back into place and I applied for the UN. And I moved to New York and I worked with social entrepreneurs in post-conflict areas in the Euro-Mediterranean region. And it was a truly interesting and great experience because I was really inspired by youth trying to make a difference when bombs are falling, youth that still believes in tomorrow even though today may actually not exist very soon. So we did a lot of training programs, we gave them access to finance, and it was really a great experience. When I was doing that, I also was sitting with my co-founder, who's my co-founder today, back then he was my friend, and he told me, we were talking about the power of technology, and I was like, look, I'm working with these social entrepreneurs, and they're dealing with real challenges, and then I have this startup scene that generates a lot of wealth, and I know that we have a lot of capital there, but they're working on things that may not really make sense, like a Tinder for shoes or something where I'm like, but we have health issues, we have conflict issues that we have to deal with. And he said, Roxanne, why don't we go to Dubai and make a hackathon? I don't know if any of you knows what a hackathon is. Yeah? So it's like a condensed amount of time that you put together and then you try to solve and develop a tangible solution. And he said, Roxanne, why don't we go to Dubai? Now, I've never been to Dubai and I really didn't have any experience. I already thought it was raining outside. And I said, okay, let's make a landing page. And we went to bed, and in the morning we woke up and we had 500 registered participants for this hackathon. I was like, oh, looks like we're going to Dubai. That's pretty much it. And we did go to Dubai, and today this is actually a community that has grown. I'm just putting up some numbers, but we have more than 2,000 members, and we had more than 75 solutions that we developed, and we worked with a lot of people. And to give you an idea of the event, how it went, so we just arrived there and we came to people, we were like, look, we're having a hackathon, we have a lot of signups, and we need some support because we don't know where we're going to host it. And we got a lot of support. And in the end, actually a friend of mine, she's like, Roxanne, you're in Dubai, I'll forward you an email of the events you should attend. So I receive an email and I see the top 3 events happening in the Middle East. That was our hackathon. And I'm like, oh, going to my own event, how lucky is that? So that was good. That idea actually now developed into a physical hub that we're building. So we're right now based in Cairo because my co-founder is from Cairo, and we're building an innovation hub where we can attract people to work on real challenges. So to give you an idea of the hackathon we made, we actually invited either NGOs or we work with Doctors Without Borders, or we came and asked, look, what are you dealing with on the field? And let's try to get engineers, designers, business students that have all these new ideas, and let's try to help them solve them. And we even, we raised a lot of money to help people to go further with the ideas, and we had prizes and 20,000 euros and more to go and go forward. So now we're building a hub. Super excited about that. That's something very different for me, and I'm really looking forward to launching this very soon. But at the same time, while I was doing that, as you can see, I like to move forward very fast. I realized that one thing was to support these entrepreneurs and support people to create solutions, but I'd never had the experience myself of building a technical product. So actually, for the last 2 years, I've been working on my own, and we raised quite a significant amount of seed funding. We were evaluated for $3 million before having an MVP stage. And we are now building, we work and specialize within artificial intelligence, and we work with video recognition and analysis and NLP. And we try to support athletes from unstructured environments. I don't like the word, but as an example, Denmark is a small country and it's very structured. A place like India, you have a lot of potential. You have a lot of aspiring children, athletes, and a lot of talent that is there. And we're trying through our product to bring this to them so they can use the product and develop themselves. And we try to predict possible injuries and help them to develop healthy lifestyles, so it doesn't matter whether they have a fancy economic background or whether their parent know the top coach of a coach. So we try to remove this entire play in between. And I'm working on that now. We're also launching soon, so lots of things are happening. Now, just to take one step back though, what I didn't share with you was that when I worked at the United Nations, actually, even though I did enjoy the program very much, the first day that I met and arrived at my job and I met the program manager, he looked at me and said, "Oh, Roxanne, you're prettier than I thought. This is going to be great." Actually, those years that I worked with the program, I went through sexual abuse and harassment. He forced me to be with him, and I haven't shared this story a lot because it's something that was very difficult to deal with, because I didn't want, when we talk about failure, I didn't want the failure to stick to my story, and I didn't want the narrative to be the harassment part, because I think it sucks, and I think it's such a difficult topic to speak about, because as a victim, it's always you who have to justify, explain, and do, and I'm getting all emotional again. No, thank you. But just to share, last summer I took the courage to speak up about this, and I submitted a report. The report was not actually gone through within the agency, because there are multiple agencies involved, and it's a complex case. And I was, reading, I saw the Me Too movement happening, and I thought, okay, if these women dare to do, then I thought in the end this is really larger than me, because it should not be something that you should struggle with and be ashamed of, but it should be something that should be dealt with and within the system. Just before I came here, I was reached out by a lady. She reached out to me and she said, "Roxanne, can we please meet?" And it's funny how we talk about synchronicity and how things happen. And she came to the airport just before I was about to take off, and she said, "Roxanne, I got this job after you. And I think you will understand my story." So she was used after me when she got that job. And now I'm so proud to share that actually this case, now we have enough evidence, because it's someone that is there now, someone from the past, and we can show a consistent abuse of 4 years now already. So when I get back, I have a lot of work to do, and we're going to go through a lot of more cases where we have to share what happened. And even though, it was a difficult process, I think this is what is necessary to speak up in order to stop such behaviors. I have behind me, I'm going to go towards the end because I know we're going on time. I don't know if anyone knows the story of Icarus. Yes? Okay, some are nodding. It's a Greek myth. I love reading and I love myths. And the story goes that I think he was on the island with his father, and in order to escape, they built wings to fly. And his father said, "Icarus, now you need to keep something in mind. If you fly too low, your wings, they will break, because the sea will actually make them too heavy, so they will break and you will drown. If you fly too high, you will come too close to the sun, your wings, the wax will melt, and you will also fall and crash." And usually, when we talk about Icarus, we always talk about, he flew too high to the sun, so he fell, so you should never go too high. This is sometimes how the story goes. I think there's a very important part of that story that we forget, and I view it a little bit different. We forget that actually Icarus, he flew. And that is, the journey of flying is the journey that we should celebrate as well, and not just look at this crash. And failure, that is human. That is part of the journey of being human. And I think that Icarus is that fall that each one of us risk when we live life fully, with love, with attention, and when we dedicate, and I love that you mentioned that you said the craft, and just when you have a love for life and for living, this is part of it. And this flight, it should be celebrated even if it ends with a crash, because it has nothing to do with the crash. And if I should put it less eloquently, I think it is better to have loved, lost, and lived than not to have done any of these at all. So I hope you will remember that. And before I end this, my mother, remember when we went through the hard time, she would always say, "Roxanne, everything in the end will be okay. Okay? If it's not okay, it's not the end." So with those words, I'll just say thank you very much.
I have a question. First, I'd like to commend you on your courage to come forward with that, because that's huge. And second, I want to ask, did you call your father from the United Nations saying, "I'm here now"?
I did. I actually did, and it goes like, so I called him. When I got an internship first when I moved to New York, and I said, Dad, guess what? I'm an intern. He said, Roxanne, anyone can become an intern at the United Nations, but can you keep the job? So that was his comment. When I kept the job, I did not call it.
Anyone else?
You know, in masses, for the new generation, how they can fight with society.
Okay.
Me, or do you want to, if you have, I don't know,
No, her question is like, you got her question, right?
Yeah. I think it's so difficult because I'm going through the process myself, and I'm planning to write about the story as well, meaning that forward with the harassment and everything. And I think even myself, when I read the Me Too, I think I found so much more courage by just listening to others and realizing that I'm not alone. So even I would encourage actually anyone to really reach out and to come to such communities like these where you meet such inspirational women, because even being close and near people like that gives you more energy to move forward. So I think it's just the action of trying to not be alone. Speak and to know that you're not alone. But in my case, and I know that how it happens is that you do feel alone because he isolated me fully from everyone. So it is very difficult. And I also have a request for women, I mean, that work in this. We should really be aware of this, because sometimes I even felt that it was difficult to talk about this topic with women, because they would also be quite harsh in the judging, either because they would fear their own job, that they would not lose it, they would not want to go through the process, or not. And I think if anyone here is a director of an organization or actually leads and has the power to make certain amendments and changes, I would really encourage that you have policies in place, that you have someone that a person can reach out to always.
You have a question, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you are a bold person, but I'm not such adversity. So I don't know, actually at that point of time, it will be very hard to ask you, but I really want to know at that first point when you broke, at that point. You have priesthood, but why can't we face that? I'm okay that I'm a director and I'm starting a company, and I wanted this company to be a women company, because in India science has been not taken. Even in our childhood we are told that engineering is not for girls and you should not go ahead with this particular thing, and so and so forth. We have been trained like that you have to be later on nurturing the kids and you have to be at home and all that. So but at that point of time we need to stand. I stood at that point. I have to close my doors in front of my grandma, because she will not be liking that I am studying, but I need to study. So I think we need to stand at that point. I don't know how I could able to do it, because my father was always behind me. Luckily, he was always like behind me, and he told me one thing: Vinita, you have to get a scholarship each and every year, so that you just get going. And believe me, I've done my PhD with a scholarship here in CSIR fellow. So that was my motivation. But I wanted to know if I have not faced any.
Yeah.
But if something like this is happening at that point of time, why can't I be bold at that point? Because you have faced. Sorry, it's a very personal and very thing. But maybe you are having some doubts about yourself at that point, and you broke.
Which point are you referring to? Because I mentioned
Yeah,
so many separate
Yeah,
points.
so many
If
ways.
somebody can abuse
No.
you, yeah, at that time you break, then he abuse. Okay. I feel it like that way. I don't know. I really don't know, because I have not faced it. I really don't know what actually happened at that
Correct.
time.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Answer this question.
It's a difficult answer, but I think it goes, I mean, as you said, you were so lucky to have someone behind you who supported you, and I think it goes back to our education and how we also learn things. I think how we in society learn things. I found a lot of inspiration from literature, because I didn't have that stronger person maybe behind me, so I read more. And I think even in school literature, it would help if we had encouraging literature, if we read literature written by maybe even women that went through hard hardships. And we need to have an emphasis on how to build a resilient character, and how to be not ashamed of speaking up, but really address your question.
No,
but
it addressed my
it's a different. I think it's a big process.
Point that as a person, as an individual, not only as a director of my company, as an individual, I can start this particular. This is very interesting topic which I am hearing here and motivated me to do, which I have never thought of. But now I am thinking that since I could able to do this with the help of my father, there could be some persons everywhere which we can come together. Here are so many.
There are actually many people across the world who do not get this opportunity. You will have seen.
I really
Support
but
you.
there must
So we have just 1 second. We have heard her. I don't know if people heard her in the plenary session. She shared a lot of such stories. Whereby women are not supported. So
that's what
So-
I wanted to make an organization. This is a thought
Yeah.
which I got here only. Like you said, I wanted to know why to make this thing happen. I really need to know why this happens. One thing I could able to understand, you have no one to back on.
So just one thing.
Type of things I
Yeah.
wanted to
So
hear.
just one thing.
No, it's not like no one
Okay.
to back on. Maybe she has a mother and other, close friends also. But it's a trauma that she personally feels what she goes through. When a person individually goes through and what we hear and listen, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And she's taken it bravely, courageously, and she's come out of it. So that's just a success for her.
Yeah. Just one thing. So let's not make this session about that abuse and how and what. So thank you so much for your question. Now to everybody who is sitting here, is there anyone who wants to share their failure? I don't want to hear success because we keep sharing that.
I can.
So I want to give a chance to somebody else. So you've been speaking. So anyone out of the audience who wants to share their failure, this is a space whereby you can speak up. And I think that is what we wanted, her or me. Let's speak about our failures as we speak about our successes. It's as good because it's as much a part of our journey. So anyone for 30 seconds in very brief speak about your failure.
Can I come?
Yeah, just from there. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, friends.
Yeah.
Since childhood, I'd always wanted to do something in life and wanted to achieve success and everything. But I had a setback in the sense that I was married to a very conservative family. In India, we are people in Gujarati especially community, we are very orthodox. Like they don't like their daughter-in-laws going to office or having a career. And I always wanted to do that. So I had to stay back, just nurture the children, look after the house for many, many years. But only once I completed 10, 12 years of marriage could I start my own career. And believe me, I started with a career which I'd never dreamt of, a financial career. And I didn't, even if you asked me in the beginning, I didn't even know how to write a check. I had never been to a bank. So imagine it's a big challenge for me. So when I started, and I didn't get much support from the family, so it was a big failure. The first year, I couldn't get any business because it was very tough in 2005 or 2004 to talk to people. Even men would not like ladies talk to them about finance or money. Saying, oh, you just keep quiet, you don't know anything about money. We men are very good at, we know all that. So it was a big setback for me that time. But still, my dad supported me all the time. You know you can do it. You have it in you. Takes it as a challenge. So I took it up as a challenge, and then with my consistent efforts and my backing from my father, I have reached this level where now I manage more than 60 crores of assets under management under me, and I have more than 500 clients.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Has taken me up and made me successful.
Thank you so much. Any last question or any last person who wants to share the failure and what was your strategy to keep creating beyond that? Anyone? Any last statement? Please go
I
ahead.
can share failure.
Yes. And what was your strategy to keep
Okay.
creating beyond your failure? So 30 seconds. Your failure.
Quickly, back in 2007, I bought a house. I asked for a loan from the bank, and I had big dreams for that place. It was beautiful, huge land. I wanted to make huge things there.
Which place?
In Portugal,
Okay.
okay, in the countryside. And so I got myself into over 200,000 euros loan to the bank.
And I started using credit cards to pay the loans because I didn't have enough money for that. Of course, sooner or later I was down in a big financial bankruptcy hole, but I did not want to file bankruptcy because I'd be 5 years, I could not do anything, as you know. So I said no. And so I had this driving force, this inner voice, my essence told me, okay, so you can choose to fight against this or you can cooperate with this. So how do you cooperate with being bankrupt? And how do you realize which way to go? So what I did is every single day was a new day, and I accepted it. And I started realizing that I had as much credit as the down credit I had. So if I had that down credit, I also definitely had the opposite. So by believing that, help came my way gradually. And the only thing I did was really know for sure that if I got myself into that situation, I was able to get out of it. And so today, I am no longer in that completely crazy situation, but I didn't count my money at the time because I was even afraid to see that I didn't have any, and I used to make 1,000 euros go around for 5,000 because I made the money go around from one card to the other. So that's it.
Thank you.
It was very simple.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah. So can we just request everybody for a group photograph? Whoever wants to join, please come forward.
Wait.